Welcome to This Explainer. Today, we are going to uncover the truly fascinating, completely invisible forces driving our daily purchasing decisions. Have you ever stopped to think about why you buy the things you buy? It feels like we're totally in control, right? Well, today, we're going to dive straight into the marketing playbook to prove that there is a highly complex, unseen machinery operating behind every single swipe of your credit card.
Just think about your morning routine for a second. Why did you buy that specific brand of toothpaste today? Like, did you reach for Colgate, maybe Synthol, or perhaps you're someone who prefers Neem toothpaste? The simple truth is we all have completely different tastes, likes, and dislikes. You might absolutely love a certain soap or shampoo, while your spouse, your neighbor, or your best friend prefers something entirely different. We're all totally unique consumers with very distinct consumption patterns, and that uniqueness, that is exactly what marketers spend billions trying to figure out.
So to help us crack this code, we're using a foundational academic text on marketing concepts. Think of this source material as our decoder ring. It breaks down the actual science of why we differ from one another when it comes to buying and using products. It answers the what, the why, how often, where, and how of our entire shopping lives. Okay, here's our roadmap for today. Number 1, why study consumer behavior? Number 2, consumer categories. Number 3, buyer versus user, and finally, number 4, influencing factors.
Let's dive right into Section 1, Why Study Consumer Behavior.
Formally speaking, consumer behavior isn't just that fleeting final moment when you hand over your cash. It's the entire life cycle. It's how individuals obtain, how they use, and even how they eventually dispose of goods. And importantly, it includes all the agonizing decision-making that happens beforehand. For a marketing manager, understanding this whole end-to-end timeline is pretty much the only way to win.
And why is this absolutely crucial right now? Well, because we live in a world of incredibly rapid technological change, and consumer tastes, they are changing just as fast. Studying behavior provides these vital clues for a company's sheer survival. Just look at the television market, for example. We saw consumers rapidly switch from those bulky old CRT TVs to high-resolution smart televisions. If a TV manufacturer wasn't constantly tracking those shifting desires for better resolution and smarter features, man, they would have been left entirely in the dust.
So, the really key takeaway here is that marketers must understand a consumer's goals, which can be short-term needs or long-term desires. This brilliantly illustrates how messaging is actually tailored. Take a bank. If a bank wants to promote its fixed deposit business, they aren't just selling a dry financial product. They are targeting prospects whose long-term goal is a peaceful, carefree retired life. They literally craft their advertising message around that specific, deep-seated goal. Because if someone doesn't value a peaceful retirement, that ad just won't work on them. It is all about matching the product to the invisible goal.
Moving right along to Section 2, Consumer Categories.
Broadly speaking, the academic text splits consumers into two distinct camps. On one side, you've got personal consumers. This is you and me, buying groceries, maybe clothes, or a new ceiling fan for our homes. Purely domestic, non-business consumption. On the flip side, we have organizational consumers. These are individuals or massive institutions like industrial factories, resellers, and government bodies, who buy goods for further production, to resell for a profit, or just for the maintenance of their organization. And as you can probably guess, the marketing tactics used on a dad buying groceries versus a massive government body buying steel are completely and totally different.
Okay, on to Section 3, Buyer versus User. Now, this is where the psychology gets really fun. You see, often, the person who buys a product is definitely not the person who actually uses it. The text uses a really relatable real-world analogy here. A mother buying toys and clothes for her young children. The mother is the buyer. She physically makes the purchase. But the actual consumers, the users, are her kids. Or think of a car purchased by one spouse but driven by the entire family. For a marketer, this is a massive puzzle. Who do you advertise to? The one holding the wallet or the one who actually desires the product?
And honestly, it gets even more complex, because in any family buying decision, there can actually be 5 different roles at play. Our source gives a fantastic example. Meet Sherrod, an engineering student who wants a calculator. He is the initiator. He gets the idea. He's also the eventual user. He asks his father, Mr. Kailash, to buy it for him. Kailash is the decider and the buyer. But before Kailash actually buys it, he asks his friend Ramesh for some advice. Ramesh suggests the Casio FX 991 ES Plus model. That makes Ramesh the influencer. So think about that. 5 distinct roles played by 3 different people, all collaborating on one single calculator purchase.
Which leads us perfectly into our final section, number 4, influencing factors.
So, what is secretly pulling the strings on our choices? What actually makes Shard want that calculator, or is Dad willing to buy it? The source breaks these variables down into 4 major buckets: psychological, personal, social, and cultural. Let's look at each one.
First up are the psychological factors. The starting point of pretty much any purchase is a recognized felt need. A need is simply the lack of something useful. But when that need becomes sufficiently pressing, it transforms into a motive. A motive is this intense inner state that directs you toward the goal of satisfying that felt need. It is quite literally the engine that drives you out of your house and into the store.
Next, we have personal factors, which are heavily tied to demographics and exactly where you are in your life cycle. The biggest personal factor? Your age. The text points out that babies obviously have special needs for things like milk powder and toys, but fast forward to young adulthood, and suddenly your pressing needs are trendy clothes, recreational facilities, and transportation. Basically, as you age, your consumption needs fundamentally transform.
Another massive personal factor is personality, which our source beautifully defines as the very essence of individual differences. It's the sum total of your psychological traits, your habits, and beliefs that determine how you respond to the environment around you. Marketers rely so heavily on personality research because they assume different personality types respond totally differently to the exact same stimuli. In fact, the text notes that personality is frequently used to segment markets for very specific products, like cigarettes, beer, and cars.
Then we have social factors. Look, none of us makes decisions in a total vacuum. Our choices are heavily swayed by our reference groups. These are the people we interact with, either directly or indirectly. Our family, our friends, our colleagues at work, and even opinion leaders in our community. If everyone in your social circle is raving about a certain brand of coffee or wearing a specific brand of shoes, that indirect pressure strongly influences your own purchase decisions.
Finally, let's zoom all the way out to the macro level. Cultural factors. Culture encompasses religion, language, customs, art, technology, the whole shebang. For our purposes, it's the sum total of learned beliefs and values that guide a society's behavior. This also includes social class, which refers to relatively permanent divisions in a society where families share similar lifestyles and values. Different social classes have distinct patterns of consumption behavior that are entirely unique to them.
When you combine all of these invisible forces, a consumer goes through a pretty standard 5-stage journey. First, you recognize a problem. 2, you search for information. 3, you evaluate your alternatives. 4, you finally make the purchase decision. And 5, your post-purchase behavior, basically how you feel about it afterward. Now, it is worth noting that for routine, everyday buys, like grabbing a loaf of bread, you might skip the search and evaluation stages entirely and jump straight from recognizing a problem to making a purchase decision.
Which brings us to the end of our journey today. We've seen how marketers map our needs, navigate the complex web of buyers versus users, and tap into the psychological, personal, social, and cultural forces that shape our everyday lives. So, I want to leave you with this final thought. The very next time you are standing in an aisle, about to drop an item into your cart, take a second to ask yourself, who is really in control of this decision? Are you buying it just for yourself, or is it the invisible forces of your culture, your reference groups, and your inner motives guiding your hand? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer, and hey, keep questioning what you buy.